It's my first time in South Africa, and I find it fascinating. It's not going to be the last for sure. And I will start to tell a story about a city that I think is the most fantastic and interesting city in the world, that is Mexico City. And it's a city that has 800 years, more or less. And by the 15th century, it was the biggest city in the world, and it was the Aztec Empire on a lake. This is Tenochtitlan, that is the Aztec Empire with the roads that went to mainland. And it's a city that is above 2,500 meters above the sea level. So it's important to understand that the geological conditions are very interesting. This is a freshwater lake, all of this, or it was. And this is a barrier made by the Aztecs for the salt area of the lake, that is this one behind. A whole rim surrounds this valley of volcanoes. So there's big earthquakes also. This is a map drew in the 17th century in the European way of Mexico City, already a colony by the Spaniards, taking over the land with some aqueducts. Our office is somewhere here in this area, and this city has grown all over the place like this. There's the mountains and the volcanoes and the city, and the last part of the lake that we have that is very small, that it has been very controversial in the last years, because some people want to take out the water, put an airport there, and a lot of ambientalists are saying, no, wait, this is the way the valley has to work, and it has to be part of the system of this system. So a big city with a lot of social problems, with great infrastructure, fantastic open spaces, but seats or homes 25 million people. Then the usage of the public space has always been about markets. Markets are very important in Mexico as a culture, not only from the colony, but before that, the different cultures in Mexico has always used the public spaces for marketing. So if you see this is Tepito neighborhood, that is a very complicated neighborhood in downtown Mexico City. Probably most of these buildings are abandoned, and the city life happens in these public spaces. It's a city that reflects its land. It's a city that it's built on layers, and layers that are not a metaphor. It's a literally translation of Mexico City. Below this concrete path, there's the Aztec Empire, the Templo Mayor, and the big pyramids. And then the Spanish came and conquered and put a city on top of that. That's the way you conquer a city. You have to put on top your beliefs, your religion, your language. And then on top of that sits the modern city from the 40s, 50s. And we're trying to do a new city, a contemporary city on top of that. And I'll show you how literally it is that we're building on top of these buildings. So the city spreads out. And there's also, on top of these layers that build on top of each other, there's also layers that unbuild, that are the big earthquakes we have. So we're in a very complicated area of earthquakes in the world. Also, the underground is water. So when you have those two conditions together, it's just impossible to have buildings live for many years. This is 85 earthquake, was one of the most damaging earthquakes. Every 30 to 40 years we have a big earthquake. It's a ritual. It's something that we understand as part of our living as architects, as cities, that eventually they go down and then they rebuild. There's a lot of ways buildings go down. Sometimes they just break, sometimes they just crack. The last big earthquake was a couple of years ago. I'll talk about that at the end of the presentation with some examples of reconstruction. So one of my main concerns when I do architecture is thinking on it like or a specialist or a technician in prosthetics. If you see that video for me is fascinating because it's about how a human dancer touches the floor, but she lost a leg, and then she has to find a new ways of creating art through dancing. So that's, for me, it's very interesting how a new piece gets together with the old body and the new body. This is the context of Mexico City, where our office is. You'll see a lot of projects now in this area. This is Juarez neighborhood. It's an area that was designed before the revolution, when Mexico City wanted to become Paris or London or any other fancy city, and the wealth or the rich were doing these amazing buildings. But then revolution came in the early 20th century, and it changed. Then you have all these layers of modern architecture. This is an area that got abandoned after the earthquake in '85. So all these auto parts and shops started gathering around, and people start leaving the area to the suburbs. Now it's coming back. Now it's gentrification is happening in a lot of these neighborhoods. So the way I like to think about these prosthetics is not this one, that is, I think, the wrong one, that is trying to place the same material to try to mimic the old material. If you understand that kind of metaphor about or as in English is called, I think it's called retrofitting a building. For me, this is not the way to do it. It's more like this one. This will be like mimicking the old material with a new material that kind of tends to always show that there's something wrong with it. For me, it's more interesting this one, the one that places the elements where they were, like this, in the Museum of Athens. But then the ones that are not there are gone, and you're not trying to mimic that or making a fake history or a fake. I don't know how they say in English if there's a word, but in Spanish we call it a fake historic. So we, instead of trying to mimic the human leg, we try to do a new kind of condition, a new kind of frame that uses new materials and uses new techniques to actually get that prosthetic and that body working again. So this is mainly downtown Mexico City. The big axis here is one of the most important avenues, that is the financial district. This is the old water archade that went from the park to downtown. This is downtown, the old historic downtown. This is Roma neighborhood, that is the fancy art galleries and so on. And so this Juarez neighborhood, that was a rich neighborhood 120 years ago, with all these big houses, was abandoned because of the earthquakes. Probably 30 to 40% of buildings in this neighborhood. Our office is right here. I live somewhere here, and all these red dots is projects that we've done. So we have mapped all this area very well in terms to understand the neighborhood and how it can come to life again. So again, this is the metro system that goes underneath. That is a very interesting subway system in Mexico City. It's probably one of the 3 or 4 largest in the world. It moves 5 to 6 million people a day. So imagine a system that moves that amount of people in a day. So the first project I'm going to show is this housing project from the last decade of the, 19th century. Our clients are the developers that they found a niche in developing that I think it's very interesting, and they've done so good. This is their first project, but now they are doing books and doing a lot of studies in cities. They say all the developers find new land, put 4 flags, and develop a building, sell apartments, and that's it. We want to recycle buildings. So they started looking and buying recycled buildings. Everybody told them they were crazy because it was hard to actually move this through the authorities and so on. But they were young. They knew that this was an opportunity, and they started doing this, and they hired us to do an intervention here. So here is the first time. All the projects that I'm going to show are 4 to 3 years old to now. I did before in my other firm with my partner. I'm not showing them tonight. They are in our book, and they are exposed. But I want to show about this part that I feel that there's a time when you're an architect that you suddenly say, okay, I don't want to do this architecture, I want to do this other. So this is my new kind of practice now that I really like. So understanding the oldness of a building and the layers, we had to open some plaster area so that we can see the structure inside to understand how it was built. I have to talk about some rules that we put, like cutting this. This was in a bad situation structurally, so we had to cut it like a cake to show all the structural elements. So there's 3 rules that you might find interesting that we actually do when we do retrofitting and old buildings with new architecture. The first one is we never turn down anything that is valuable. So if the building has any value, not even a governmental value, not even someone that tells you, a historian that tells you, oh, this building has a value and you cannot tear it down. Even buildings that are not even important in architecture, but we think they have a value, we keep the structure. The second rule is no historic fakes. So anything that is gone, we don't rebuild it. We don't do that. So, and that's a very important thing in Mexico because little towns, colonial towns, are being rebuilt with all these fake historics. For me, it's a problem. And the third rule, that is the most important for a developer, is we go for maximum density always. If the site allows us to do 4 floors, we do 4 floors. If it allows us to do 20, we do 20. We don't waste any square meter in the city. Because cities has to go into a densified process. We know that now. We've gone over some decades arguing this about urban sprawl. That is a problem, especially in cities this size. Cities that have more than 10, 15 million people, then the whole system collapses if you don't go higher. So the black walls are the original structure. And then these slimmer walls that they're supposed to be gray, but you cannot see them gray, you see them black, are the new partitions or the new architecture, all the light elements. That's the lower floor. You have this is the street right here, some commercial area in the front. New dwellings, this was a 4-apartment building, now it's a 17-apartment building. New tower on the back patio with a new apartment. Second floor, you have a double height here. Second floor, double height here, 1 bedroom, and then you have the bedroom back here. And this is the upper floor for the commercial area. I'm not going to show all the plans, but I just want to show you how. This is the upper part that is all new. There's no old elements. This is the new densification, 2 floors more on top of this house. This is the old house, or the old structure, and this is the new structure. So you see, it's pretty densified. We went to the maximum density it allowed us. The site, the specifics on this site is you have to leave 20% clear, and then you can go up for 5 floors. So we have, actually, this counts as 2, then 2 more, this is 5, and this doesn't count because it's a underneath floor. So, now, the structure of the stairs is the one this is the site next to us, that is a building from the 70s. The new system of stairs is the one that articulates the way to go into all these apartments. It's a very easy system of steel and plates. And you see the relationship between the renovated building, that is this, and the new part, that is this. So always the elements have to be working together, and you have to understand what's a 19th century building, what's a 21st century intervention. The parking, Mexico City has been very strong in politics against cars in the last years. So before we had a minimum of cars, so if you were going to do a housing building, you have to do minimum this amount of cars. Now the change has worked in the code. We don't have minimums, we have maximums. So you can do zero parking in a housing building, or you can do maximum this amount. So we haven't done any parking with these clients. They are against parking spaces. The more parking spaces you have, the more cars you have, then the more lanes you have, then the more highways you do, then the more terrible the city becomes. So the bet in Mexico City is to leave the car, have better transportation that has become better in the last years. And so the market of clients that live here, they work close, they use bikes. So this is our parking lot. This is the renovation apartments inside these 4.5 meter height spaces. They are fantastic spaces. We didn't turn anything down. We left it as it was. We just cleaned it up a little bit. And we built these new intermediate spaces so that you can have a double height apartments. Top. These layers of 19th century or 18th century architecture, then you have the modernism, then you have this new thing growing on top of the building, and so on. So these are two apartments next to each other in the rooftops. Here, you see the cut we did. We cut this wall to be able to fit this new building on the back. This was the old patio on the back of the house. And we left all these spaces, corners of the building. They could go in security or blockage. So you see the proposal. So there's a lot of types of elements that you can actually put in the body so that they can work in different ways. This is a shotgun or a machine gun that also helps you to walk, right? This is a fantastic movie by Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez. It's one of my favorite directors. And they actually make this quite interesting as the way of, she loses a leg in the movie and then she puts the machine gun, and the machine gun has two purposes, right? And they always have two purposes or more purposes, and that's the way something works. This is the building right next to the one I just showed, and this building is a one-family single home from the times it was a rich area. So this was a very rich family living here, and the project I just showed is right here. So we didn't want to copy the same kind of situation in programs as it was. So we needed to do something else. It needed to be a prosthetics that did something different. So we tried first the idea of having the structure outside and changing the program, not to housing, but to offices and commercial area on the bottom, so that they can fit from each other. We start to work on the volumetrics, maximum density always, and being able to bring light. This is the south. So for us, the south is the light coming in. So through these cuts, we brought light to the apartment building. If not, we will get that building into shape. So different forms of creating that. The form is, the conclusion of the light that was coming in. And our other building is here. The street now is on this side. And this is the old remaining of the house, the thick walls. And then this is all the new part, this one. So it's like two pieces that come together. This is the coffee. You saw this picture here. The apartments are here. There's this wall dividing the two properties. But then we open this wall so that the patio interacts with the coffee place here and with the public area. Here, oyster bar here, and then a Japanese restaurant on the back. Office building here, and then you go up to different offices. This is the other parking space for the back. So, going up, This is the old house, and this is the 2 floors we put on top. This is a concrete box that is floating a little bit on the. So you see the density. The density of the city goes higher, and then the old part. So the different floors. And then this is the new structure that is still very light. And these are all the buildings working together on the back. This is the old house, the previous project. This is the new house of the project that I'm showing now, and the way they work. So the new structure comes through these concrete walls that are continuous, are in angle form in each room. So they bring the structure to the upper floors. You see here there's a structure element also that goes through the molding. It's the entrance to the Japanese place that is on the back, that is very small. And the building, this is a 7-story high building, and this is the one that I showed before with the housing on the back. You're looking at here to the apartments, the upper apartments, and the office building. So this is the new street that this project is making livable, and now you go there after 3-4 years. This has been going on in this area. It has changed a lot, this neighborhood, without being so aggressive. It's a very simple solution that it's adding without having to demolish big parts of buildings that I think is the worst enemy of the city. If you have to build and demolish a block instead of doing this. So the context is the dark gray, the middle gray is the original houses for the projects, and the light gray is the new pieces on top. So there's in earthquakes as structures, because of the pressure, they tend to go sideways, right? So these are elements that they actually help to bring this and put back that structure. Very similar to this movie Crash. You know, how this woman cuts the leg and has problems, but she wants to keep on driving and keep on doing things. So for us, it's important this reference, because this is the same neighborhood I show you. This is a building that doesn't have any value in architecture, at least for the authorities. This is a building that you can demolish in one night and get a permit and so on. Same clients, they told us, we don't want to demolish this. What could you do with this? So we started doing art shows so that we can have people go in the building and feel the building, start what they thought the building could be. And we discovered the structure must probably be done by an engineer, not an architect. Most of these things are better if they were. Architectural presentations, photographers, artists, using this space, and we waited like 6 months to come up with a program. They hire us, and we said, okay, let's wait until you have the permits. We'll do a sketch for you to get the permits, but we love the idea. So we started doing this, asking people, getting people involved in the space, and then we knew that the project had to be a public project, and it had to contain public space on the bottom, maybe a market, maybe some market that could go up and could have different public or semi-public spaces on top. So this is the old auto parts building. This was the selling area. This was an office floor, and this was a warehouse where all the boxes for the auto parts were. So you came here, you bought. A person did all the paperwork in the middle. They went up, got the things, bring you the box, and you went out. So it was an industrial building. Structure very simple. kind of you see there. So we took out all this, the framing, and then we put some stairs, some frames on the top, and then we made a public stair that went up, cutting these slabs. And then we changed all the facade without taking any structural element out, except some slabs that we cut out. Program, it's a market that goes up, some little, a yoga space, and a public terrace for a restaurant. So that's the original condition a few years back of the whole area. That all these auto parts shops has been changing the zone to a different area in the city because the rents went expensive here. So of course it has to change the program, and this is what we design after that. So taking the same bones or the same body, but changing the of how to do that. That frame, the 80 or the say. I haven't given a lecture in English in a long time, so I'm not fluent yet. This is the new frame on top that hosts the terrace, and then the market just goes on until this floor that is the yoga spaces. So you see, this is architecture in Mexico City, and this is architecture in Mexico City. We have this contrast. So it's a project that aims to the community. We work with the neighbors to say, what do you need in this neighborhood? We need a little market. It's far to go to the market. So we plan this coffee place. And it's always open. It's public. Very simple solutions, very cheap. We didn't have a big budget, of course, so it was good for us not to demolish. Also, not demolishing becomes very sustainable because you don't have to bring so many materials to the site. We actually did this building, closed doors, we did all the renovation, and then we just took out the scaffolding outside, and it was done without bothering neighbors or. So this is the main stair that goes up. And this is the activity every day. The weather helps in Mexico City also. It's very similar to Johannesburg. It's very stable, and we don't have big changes through seasons, so we can have an open stair with no problems. Different ways of doing. Frames and structures. Now, I'm going to go out of Mexico City to show you a little bit about what we've done outside. It has to do more with governmental work. The last year, it was fun for us because we were involved in lots of programs with the government. This is Mexico. This line represents the border with our upstairs neighbor that is a loud drug addict neighbor that is right here, that is called the US. And then it's us, and then our lower neighbor is very quiet, it's Guatemala. So we did a project, this is Cancun, so this is a very big country, it's probably the size of South Africa. This is Tijuana, if you put Tijuana on a map in Europe, it's probably Sweden, and if you put this part south, it's probably Egypt. So this is the size of Europe from north to south. So it's a very big country. We have desert, we have mountains, we have snow, we have jungle, we have all the microclimates you can imagine in this country. So it's very different to work here in a 25 million city than to work in the areas in the middle of the country, depending on the site. So this is Mexico City right here. This little one, and then this is the state of Morelos, that is a neighborhood state, and it has all these different areas, and it was very interesting work in this because this is social housing, I'm not sure if it's particularly for Mexico. I think it's a problem all around the world in the last 40 years. Social housing has been how do you say, decepción, well, a lack of interest from governments all around the world, or lack of vision, or maybe ignorance. Social housing has been, and I'm sure it happens here the same, I saw some examples today, it has been segregated to the outskirts of cities, and then it has to be placed together with public transportation. Public transportation never comes, never happens, so people spend their time living in a little bus, going to work, and then spending 1/3 of their day transporting just to get to their little house that the father government gave them, right? Or gave them a credit. So, Infonavit is the institute in Mexico that leads with housing. And they washed their hands in the 80s. Mexico became much more a capital country based on capitalism. And they started to say, well, the investors are the ones with the problem of housing. We'll just give the credits to the workers. And Infonavit works in a very interesting way. It's one of the best models in financing social housing in the world. It's every peso or every dollar that the worker gives for housing, the employer gives $1 and the government gives 1. So it's a third-way party system to give credits. Most of the countries allowed to have access to this credit. So we have built thousands and thousands of these houses, millions and millions of these houses. But the problem is that it's not only numbers, it's also about the quality of life in these spaces. There's always this problem, no? The code tells you that you have to have 1 car per house, but probably 80% of these people don't have a car, so this space is always wasted. So this is the house that they let us do, kind of an example of the way the houses grow. So the program is called One More Room, or A Cuarto Más, and means how can you make one more room? Because most of these houses experience transformations during the year. The family traditions in Mexico expects, through very conservative families throughout the country, they would actually build on top of their home over and over. So you will see houses that start in 1 floor, and then they go 2 floors, 3 floors, 4 floors, and they just go on. The problem with that is that they lose the credit and they lose the insurance if they change the base structure. So our idea was to promote projects that actually you can do that. So this is maybe a 2-parent traditional, 2 kids or 3 kids. One of the kids grows old, goes to the US to work. The other one gets married, brings the wife here. So then the parents tell them, okay, you can build on top. He builds a little piece on top, and he lives with the wife there, but then they get divorced or get separated. So the husband or the son is the one that leaves. So the new daughter of the family lives here with the 2 kids, but then she doesn't have money, and then she has to put a business. So then they use this part on the front to put a nail salon or a car thing or a little restaurant, whatever. So the mix of uses start to become very complicated. So if you see this, I just realized that I had to show you this context, but I didn't prepare this lecture so that you can see this context, because I thought everybody knew, but it's very particular in Mexico. But probably you have it here because I see a lot of similarities between South Africa and Mexico in that sense. My own fascination with stairs, and with stairs in Mexico, that they always become part of the facade, you know, doing like a new layer on top of the original house. My fascination with auto construction. This is not auto construction. Actually, this is a government's house from the 70s. This is the original house. This is the original house. But what happened with this family is exactly that. This is one family house, but this family, probably the couple that have kids and older, they probably live in the lower part, and then they rent, or part of the family lives upstairs. So the stair goes outside. So there's a connection, but there's a units. the same house. This is a typical, of course, there's another fascination. The materials are incredible. You see this, and you see this, and you see this, and I think it's great. But here is mainly programmatic. The way they use this house is exactly the same as this one. But this got remodeled. This is new. This, somebody did it after. So this is a copy of this. And then they change also the program to make this one house and this another, or an apartment and another apartment. So there's always this kind of like, this is my house, but then I have 2 rooms, and then I could actually live down there. See, this got better. Probably this guy rents this house, and this is on sale because they cannot do anything with this house. So I think it works. So how do you design this? This is something that is, for me, it's very interesting. Auto construction, that is 95% of what's constructed in Mexico and probably in the world too. How do you design these conditions instead of designing the final solution in form? How do you make strategies so that it happens? So we started with one project, and it's called the One More Room. So the government gave us money, like $5,000 to $6,000 to make 10 square meters, and to make an experiment in architecture to see how we can deal as architects with that. So what we did is a very simple system to grow one more floor with 2 angles of metal, and the 2 angles could actually work as partition for glass, as a railing system for curtains, as a system for shelving, as a structure, and also a lighting system if you pass a cable through those 2 angles and then you bring down. But also in the exterior, as a pergola, you can actually make a floating garden. So by doing that, this is the main house. This is one house, and this is house 2. You see the program, it's very simple. It's 1-bedroom house. This is the main basic house, 36 square meters, that is allowed in Mexico to build for families. It's called a progressive house. What it means is that you can actually put a stair here and build 2 more rooms on top. So they give you the first kind of step to your house, and then you build your own. So instead of putting the stair inside, we decided to go outside and using that space that nobody uses. There's also one thing about that I feel very interested in, that is the aspirations of housing. Mexicans surely are very introverted into their houses. Houses, they always build of the terrain. There's a little, you enter and you have a fantastic space or a great garden inside, or your chickens or whatever you have inside. But you don't want your neighbors to see you, you don't want to see anybody else. The problem with this type of housings from 20, 30, 40 years ago is that they copy the American model of houses with a front yard and a backyard. That we don't use that in Mexico. Nobody likes it. Nobody takes care of this garden. It's our neighbor's model, and they have the garden, their front garden really nice so that the neighbor sees. We don't care about this. We care from the door inside. So this is a problem always. Houses should be built all the way here and give more space to the unit. So instead of putting the stair here, we said, let's keep the space as it is, and let's put the stair on the outside, so that you could have an extension of your home, but also that other promise of having another, or a rent, or another part of the family living upstairs, or it could even be a little office, or a little restaurant, or a salon for nails, or whatever. So this is the new room that is actually, you can extend it to here and have 2 more rooms arriving from here. You can even have a little kitchen here and a bathroom on top of the other bathroom. Very simple solution with a very cost-efficient material that is steel and block. So the idea is that the structure comes inside. All these walls and this slab doesn't have any steel inside, and that was very important. We took the steel out and put it in the inside. This is the way they. So this is the example we built, and then people got awareness of this, and they started to say, how much is that? Well, it's not. You don't have to pay. You just have to get a credit because this was part of a program. So if you wanted this prototype with 20, you wanted this prototype, you just have to go get a credit. Your credit for this based on this. Use this front part of the house. This photo is very weird. It's compressed like this. The back part of the extension, the interior with the structure, with the lighting system, the hanging. Also, you can do it as hangers. You can put beds. And this little garden here. So that's one example where we did with the government. This is another example of housing in rural areas. So this is not an existing unit. This is a new kind of prototype for a specific site on the mountains, on a very cold area. An area that has a lot of cattle and chickens, and people are they work in the fields. So instead of doing cars and roads and things like that, we understood the site as one big site for agriculture. Some parts are meant for agriculture, but also if you start to grow your house, you can eventually grow it further and have some parts for cattle or agriculture inside your home. So the idea is very simple. It's through a wood fence that is one module. Then you have 2 pieces of that. Then you can turn it and have 8 pieces and have a system that could be part your home, part an extension for your families, your kids' homes, or a warehouse for your crops and things like that. So the first phase is the lower house. This is the first structure gets built. Very simple. This is your property. Then the communities areas are out here, and the second floor is for storage first, and then you put these glass walls, and then you can make this a room with an exterior staircase. But at the beginning, it's just a warehouse, the same way farms work, where the upper part of the farm is to store. So we finished this in a part of our community that we did 2 prototypes of this to see how they work. These are the prototypes all over the place. This is our prototype, and we started furnishing it with local artists, with local manufacturers. The upper floor furnished. There's another prototype that we built without the upper part occupied. It's just the storage area. So from that, then the earthquake happened a year and a half ago. So this is another state in Mexico. This is the state of Mexico. High in the mountains, it's a forest. It's very cold at night, warmer during the day. Near the volcanoes. So this is a family that lost their home that was here, a little wood shack here. With the earthquake, they lost it. And a foundation, this is not part of the government, actually this comes through a foundation. It's funny, the story, because this influencer that is very popular in Mexico and the United States, he's Mexican, but he works in both countries. He has, I don't know, 100 and I don't know how many million followers in Instagram. And he, after the earthquake, he sent a post through his media saying that to donate, instead of giving the money to the government, please donate to my account. And he received around $4 million in 24 hours. So this is a new power of influencing in social media. So he got more money than most of the foundations that were like traditional foundations. So this kid that is 20 years old, he had $4 million to rebuild homes, and he approached Carlos Cedillo, that is, he was the director of the housing unit in the government, and he had a foundation, and he said, please help me to put this money in the right hands, not through the government. And he said, okay, let's do it through my foundation, and let's build these many hundred homes. So they gave us $10,000 for each home. We had to build with $10,000, homes of 50 meters for the family. So we went to see the family. This is a very little town. Oh, okay. This is a very little town in the middle of nowhere. No internet, no anything, but every kid in that little town knew this guy, because the first day I went there, I went with this influencer. I have no idea who it was. So I said, who's this funny guy, 20-year-old that speaks too much, 6 a.m. in the morning in a van, and we went to this little town, and we were walking, and kids just fled out of the houses and where they were taking pictures with this guy. So I said, well, this guy is famous. Then I asked, and I realized that he was very famous in social media. This is the little house we did for this family. This was a site that was owned by one family, and the normal thing is that they will divide it with their kids. So then they divided it into 5 parts because they had 5 kids. So this is the site of my client, Karina, and her family, and you had to enter through the houses of their brothers, typically in these rural conditions. So what we did, instead of doing a one single floor, because she had so few square meters inside, we did a almost 3-floor unit, very compact, open kitchen. This is very common in that area. They cook with fire, not with gas, not with stoves. So it's an open kitchen. Then there's a little part of the kitchen here with a bathroom, and the living spaces interior. This is exterior. So there's only water and pipes in this little piece. So that's the water tank. This is the kids' rooms. This is the adult room, and then they go out to the roof garden. That is this. That they can actually build a new room in the future here. That's the water tank. So it's very simple. The solution: the exterior stair, the open kitchen here. And the light only comes through. That's Karina. That's one of his kids, her kids. This is the inauguration that they did a whole fantastic food. But look at this field. This is a cornfield. So what we wanted as architects in the office, we wanted to take advantage of this view, because you can see the volcanoes, you can see the farm, you can see all the town, and then she will be cooking while watching the kids run in the yard. So for us, it was important to have that high density. This is the old house they had. Now they use it for keeping stuff in. And through that project, we got connected with some developers that they needed to change the way social housing and especially public spaces work. So, oh no, sorry. There's this, we're just building this one that is in another part that suffered in the earthquake in the south state of Oaxaca, right here, one of the poorest areas of the country, the shortest way from the Pacific to the Atlantic, from the Pacific to the Atlantic or the Gulf of Mexico. So this is going to be a big infrastructure in the future, competing with the Channel of Panama. This is going to be a train and 2 parts. So this is a very poor area. And we did these 2 houses. It's a tropical area. This is very hot and windy. Very simple system, concrete. I'm just going to go through this really quick. Water only on this area. It's a swamp, actually. The water from the sea comes inside. It's very open. And, okay, now the important thing. The parks, I have like 5 minutes, no? I'm just going to finish with the videos, and that's it. Okay. So, let's begin first with this one. A unit, part of a unit, around 600 homes, we were asked to do a prototype for the parks. This is a unit that actually works very good. It has an abandoned percentage of 10% only, so houses are livable. There's families, there's kids. This was in a very good quality, this whole area, because it's close to the center of the city. So we propose a series of plays, games for the kids, the younger kids, like this, concrete and steel. Some bumps, some different topological things, and a lot of sports. This is the new playground. I remember one of the mothers of the kids, we were under construction, and she comes and tells me, why are you putting me those games for the kids from the 70s out of concrete? You don't have money for the Chinese ones, the plastic ones? And I'm like, yeah, we have money for that, but they're going to disappear in 6 months. This is going to be forever. She understood that this was the way to do it, actually. So kids are happy with it. We did a very simple job of changing the condition of this park. This is the other park also. Here we had a big theme with water because we did a new system for the water that was running through that park. This is a design of the pavement. So this is the area for adults. It's a pavilion with a water. This is the water running from here to here. When we found this park, the water from here was perfectly drinkable, and once it got here, it was contaminated because people throw garbage and everything. So instead, people wanted us to intubate the water below because it was a danger, the water was contaminated. And we convinced the community that water was super important, and we just had to let them know that the river was theirs and it wasn't a contaminated water system, it was a clear water system, so they can actually drink from there. So now kids play and they go and swim here. This is an old football field. This is a new area for skaters, younger teenagers or younger adults. And this is a kids area, and then this is a sports area. Oh, also, there's a big connection. The school is right here, so there's another community that goes here. So if you see this path, this is people, all the mothers walking their little kids from the school to this other community that is here. So we wanted to do that by doing this plaza of connection, because we couldn't do or make that people went around they just crossed through here, right? So this is the final thing or final solution in the design. Very simple materials. This was done with $150,000, all this. And now I'll show you this little video, and that's it. Well, I'll just end up saying that I truly believe that designing the public space is the best way to help cities and help communities and lower crime problems and addictions. And I'm a positive thinker in that sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
That was the end.
For showing us your
Oh, thank you.
body of work. I will just make three very brief comments. I really think that you showed us, first of all, an aesthetic of renovation, how to renovate and look really financial as well. The second thing that you showed us is ecology of styles and taste, particularly how the old can live with the new, and I really think is very important in the context of the cities we live. And I think the third thing that you showed I find very interesting as well is really how to listen to the community in order to be there. And with these comments, I would like to open for questions. We only will be able